Welcome back, everyone, to Living Your Greatness. And I am joined again today by Don Durrett. Don, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, Ben, I recognized your name, but I couldn't put two and two together. It turns out that I was on your show 4 years ago. So yeah, it's good to be back.
Don, it's good to have you back. And it's crazy how time flies. You're absolutely right. It was literally in 2021. And at that point in time, gold was trading about 1,800. Even silver was about $25. And here we are today where gold is at all-time highs and silver is just completely ripping. But I want to start off, Don, what I'm more concerned about is seeing this a couple of years back. I was more concerned about the things that were already present. So in terms of like inflation and government debt around the world, I would love to get your view on what do you see right now that fears you right now in the financial world?
A lot. I basically fully believe that the debt bubble, the everything bubble is going to pop, and it's currently going down that path. It's basically the air is coming out of the bubble right now. And that I believe that once the selling starts on Wall Street, that it's going to pick up speed and the Fed will lose control. That's my expectation. In other words, I think it's going to be worse than 2008, a lot worse than 2008. 2008 really was a recession that lasted less than a year. And the Fed had tools to put it back together. They could lower rates, they could print money. We didn't have inflation at that time. They weren't nearly in the box they're in today, not even close. They had a lot of tools that they could use. And the recession was over, basically 2009. I don't think that's the case today. I think the debt bubble is a lot more severe. I mean, we're at $38 trillion, over $1 trillion in annual interest payments. But it's the trend that we've been on. I submit that the U.S. economy peaked in 98, 99. And that was the last time that the U.S. economy really could stand on its own feet. So after the dot-com bubble burst in 2000, at that point, the U.S., we went into a situation where we had to manipulate the economy. We had to basically we live on debt. So we had about $5 trillion in debt in 2000. Today we have about $38 trillion, adding $1 trillion a year. And, we have this debt explosion that we're living off debt. So we're literally living off the rest of the world because we're exporting our debt to the rest of the world and they're subsidizing us. And they're our creditor to a large extent. We're dependent on our creditors to live on debt. It's no different than a business that's kind of a zombie who's dependent on their bank to keep them alive so the bank doesn't lose their loan. But things are breaking. So remember we had zero rates from like 2010 to 2016. Why? I mean, the economy was growing. Why were they at zero? They were at zero because we couldn't basically live on our own. Stand on our own. We had to manipulate it. So manipulate with low rates and high spending. And we changed the way this economy exists. It's no longer a kind of a free market. It's a basically controlled market, manipulated market. But throughout this, from 2000 to now, and even before 2000, we've allowed debt to expand. Not just government debt, but personal debt and corporate debt. So we have this massive debt bubble. But the problem is we don't have the economic growth to sustain it. And so at a certain point, the bubble burst, which I think is coming, the overall debt bubble bursting. And I think it's right around the corner. I mean, it's the reason I got into gold and silver is I saw this outcome as inevitable. Because once you start down that path, it's like a path of addiction. When you become addicted, in the very initial stages of addiction, you think you can handle it. You have control over it, right? But at a certain point, you lose control. That's what addiction does. And we've been addicted to debt. We thought we could handle it, but now it's out of control. And I believe that we've entered a debt doom loop, where the debt itself becomes so problematic that you cannot. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. It's just like an addiction. So we have about a $2 trillion annual deficit. how do we get that lower? Well, we really can't. Doge tried to take 200 billion out, didn't do anything. Now, if they took out $1 trillion, which they couldn't really do, if they cut $1 trillion in spending, it would absolutely create a massive recession, right? So they can't cut spending. That's not a possibility. Sure, they can cut 100, 200, 300 billion, but that doesn't do anything. You still have to borrow this massive amounts of money, and then you have to roll over this debt. So when you roll over the debt, you have to borrow even more. Because the way that we borrow our money is we basically, let's say we borrow $1 trillion, we get the $1 trillion and we spend it. And then we pay interest on that trillion, and they come back and they say, okay, now give me my principal. Well, you don't have the trillion, right? So you got to borrow another trillion. And so that's a big problem because we're rolling over a lot of debt. Now, the problem here is that our economy is slowly become hollowed out. Our middle class keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And our middle class keeps getting more and more behind the eight ball where they can't afford basically their budget, their monthly budget. And it's not going to get fixed anytime soon because wages are going up about 2.5%. And that 2.5% is the average. Well, guess who's getting the bigger raises, right? It's the executives. The executives they're getting their 5%. And a lot of people aren't getting any raise at all in the service sector. And so the middle class, it keeps getting more weaker, if you will. And so that's not getting fixed. And so now if you look at what's happening today, you never have a labor market. So unemployment went from 4% to 4.6. So you never have a labor market that trends higher and the economy is strong. So the economy isn't strong, it's getting worse. So unemployment's going higher as we speak, right? Just went to 4.6. It's trending. You don't ever see that in a strong economy. So I think that we are heading the debt bubble. We have the head debt bubble, and then we have all these problems on top of it. Then the other thing that we have that you never see happen is normally it takes in a normal economy, an economy is not in a recession, whatever, to replace a job usually takes about 3 months, about 12 weeks. Today it takes 24 weeks, takes half a year. That you only see that 12-week to 24-week when you have basically a recession. You don't see it. The other thing you never see is you never see housing prices going down. So housing prices right now are going down. You never see that in a stronger economy. Inventory levels are going up. So if you look kind of holistically at it, you have to believe things are getting worse. And simultaneous to that, this debt bubble is out there, if you will, creating a lot of stress on the system. So the reason why gold is at $4,000, actually $4,300, and it's up 60%, actually 65% year to date. Last year it was up 27%, and this year it's up 65%. And the reason why is not because of inflation, right? Inflation has been somewhat under control. Going up 65% was not because of inflation. It wasn't going up because of fear of inflation, right? No, it doesn't go up 65% because, inflation is coming back. No, that's not why. It's going back because of concerns over the debt bubble in the U.S. Because the U.S. is about 23, 24% of global GDP. And it's a big market, and most countries imports their goods into the U.S. and someone dependent on it, and they're nervous. They're like, what's happening in the U.S.? They have a problem. Plus, we're exporting inflation because we've had all this inflation. So when people buy our bonds, when inflation exists, you're actually losing money. So it's not a good bet. And so the rest of the world has been dependent, and now we have an inflation problem. That's really bad for our economy. And then the U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar comes under pressure. So these are the reasons why gold is going up. You never hear mainstream media talk about why gold is going up. They want to ignore that Because if they say it's a structural problem with the U.S. economy, they don't want to say that. It's all about spin, spin, spin. But we're on the precipice. I really believe, I like to use these guys as example because these guys have been around since the 60s. I mean, if you look at Warren Buffett basically, he stopped buying stocks and started adding cash. And they call it the Buffett indicator, where the size of the overall stock market is 200% of GDP. And Buffett goes all-time high. Buffett goes, he actually called it the Buffett indicator. He didn't call it that. They named it after him because he talked about it a lot. And so that's an overvalued stock market. And so Buffett's like $350 billion in cash. He might be one of the best investors ever. And what the heck is he doing sitting on I forget the percentage. I think it's like 30% of his funds in cash. Then the other guy, Jeremy Grantham, who's picked every bubble, he says, this is the most, I forget the exact term he used, vulnerable market he's ever seen. Now, in his lifetime, he didn't see the 1929, but he lived through the Japanese market and then the late 90s in 2008. Those three bubbles, he says this one's worse. This is the most vulnerable, right? And the other one is Jim Rogers, who's also been around forever. And Rogers says, he says, the business cycle did not go away. And in other words, he says, we're going to have a recession, people. It didn't go away. It's coming back. And then he also says that this is going to be the worst in his lifetime. So those three guys are all nervous. We should be nervous. I think Roger says is to be careful, be very careful. That actually means don't be exposed to this economic train wreck that's coming. So I don't see a way to avoid the train wreck. I think it's coming soon. I don't know exactly when, but it could happen very quickly. I think that the AI trade is really the only reason why we didn't have a recession earlier. And a lot of people on Wall Street, it's unbelievable how bullish Wall Street is right now. Wall Street money managers right now are only 3% in cash, which is an all-time low. Maybe the sentiment, people are more bullish right now than they have been in the last 2 years. In the last 2 years, the stock market went up 25% in 2023 and 24. And this year was up, 15%. And they're more bullish now than ever, which is insane when you look at all this negative. So the AI trade, I'll end with this. The AI trade has been the leader of this market. As a matter of fact, the NASDAQ 100 is tripled in 3 years, which is absolutely crazy. Almost tripled in 3 years from like 11 trillion to 30 trillion. Just because of the AI trade, the NASDAQ 100 is basically mostly AI stocks, and those stocks, absolute explosion. But that AI trade is starting to get long in the tooth. NVIDIA had an all-time high of 212. Yesterday it was at 170. If it goes to 150, I think it's a 29% correction. Now it's at 17% down. It bounced a little bit to 175 today, but that's still a long ways from 212. I don't think it's going to make a new high. I think it goes to 150, which would be 29% correction. And I think I don't know if it's a 29 or a 39%. I forget, but from 212 to 150 is a crash, if you will. And I think that if NVIDIA goes to 150, and I think it will, I think that's going to be the trigger of basically popping that debt bubble, popping that stock market, the whole deal.
I appreciate that answer there, Don. And it actually makes me very concerned that a lot of people are not actually being financially educated in terms of seeing all this truth. And so a question I'm curious to ask you is, seeing in the stock market that the tech sector as well as the AI sector and even meme stocks and other things like that are still getting so much attention and so much love, why do you think this is? And when do you think the truth will come out more to the everyday investor, but also to break Wall Street's habits?
Well, I actually blame Wall Street for the bubble because Wall Street controls the narrative. They control the narrative through the media. And Wall Street talks their book. They have to be positive. I mean, they are selling stocks and bonds. They're not. That's what they're doing. They want people to be confident and optimistic. They want people to call up and sell and walk away. Those are their customers. So their customers are investors, and investors, they make their money through investing, ING, investing, right? So they need investors to invest. That's the book. And so I blame them because the media needs to recognize that the financial world is going to have a bias, a positive bias, an optimistic bias. But the media, for some reason, I don't know why, they refuse to have a balanced viewpoint. I watch CNBC quite a bit because when I stretch in I want to get the tone of Wall Street, if you will. So when I stretch in the morning, I'll turn it on, and then when I have lunch, I'll turn it on. So I get about 20 minutes a day of it. I get the tone. I never see it. The shows that I watch, I'm sure some of them have them, but the shows that I watch never have people like me or Peter Schiff on. It's not going on, by the way, if I get invited. I don't want anything to do with mainstream media. Peter Schiff, Jeremy Grantham, these people that kind of have a holistic viewpoint, but and are bearish, especially Schiff. There's so few of the guys that they let on. I'm only mentioning Schiff because he's one of the few guys that gets on mainstream media once in a while. Most of the guys, like Ed Dowd, they don't let Ed Dowd on, right? He's one of the better analysts, macro analysts out there. They don't let Luke Groman on, one of the better ones, right? There's no balanced approach because they don't want to scare people. They want, but what's amazing to me is that the mainstream media, they don't realize that they're causing exactly what you talked about, investing in illiteracy. People need to know the risk that they're actually taking. I always tell people to invest in gold and silver mining stocks that you are not investing, you're speculating. Only invest what you can afford to lose. This is very high risk, high volatile stuff. But you don't hear people ever say that on these shows. They never talk about, we're in Betterland here, people. If you stay in, there's a good chance you could get rug pulled and be down 30% in the next 6 months. They should say that once a week at least, and they never say it ever, because it might not happen, but there's a probability there, right? And they need to show all this stuff. I only used a few data points, negative data points. There's lots of them that they don't talk about that they should. If you look at freight, right? The economy is growing right now. So-called economy is growing at 3% right now. Well, if you look at the freight index, it's in the toilet. I mean, the truckers, it's like, wait a minute here. This is a 3% economy. Everything's fine. So they talk about the consumer. The consumer's being healthy, right? But if you strip out, the one thing that they include in all that consumer spending is they can include all the CapEx spending for all these data centers. And they call that the consumer, which that's consumer spending. Somebody bought building materials. They'll put it all in that bucket. If you strip that out, consumer spending is in the toilet, just like the freight index is in the toilet. So they basically cherry pick the data. If you take all the CapEx spending out of the data centers, who only benefit a few companies, they do not benefit 98% of the families in this country, right? They benefit a very small group of companies. If you strip that out, GDP is sub 1%. So again, you need people on there that are analyzing the data more holistically. I'll stop there.
I appreciate the answer. And question I want to follow up with is, I'm curious to get your perspective on, there was a dot-com bubble back in the 1990s, late 1990s to be specific. Do you see what's happening right now in tech and AI? Do you see that being similar, or do you see it actually being a lot more terrifying?
Well, there's a lot of similarities, because back in the late 90s, there was a big spend, if you will, for the internet infrastructure. So you had a lot of companies that overspent, and the WorldComs of the world, and they were trying to build out the infrastructure of the internet. And a lot of those companies took on a lot of debt, and a lot of them went bankrupt. And so we're seeing we're seeing that same similarity where people are taking on a lot of debt to build out the infrastructure. So history is rhyming there. The other thing that's going to rhyme, I believe, is a bubble and then a pop into the bubble. I think that's going to rhyme for sure. The difference here between the internet and AI is that the internet had unbelievable leverage as far as productivity goes. I mean, we've seen it, right? And all that productivity really kicked into gear after the bubble popped, right? The 2000s. The 1990s was like the beginning of it all, but the 2000s when everything really kicked into gear. And if you look at Amazon, what Amazon did post 2000, I mean, it was unbelievable how that company just grew. And the reason why it grew is because everybody had a computer, everybody had access to the internet, and became easy peasy to use. Amazon and Facebook was another one that absolutely exploded because once that infrastructure all got in place. AI, I don't think AI, the only infrastructure that they talk about on AI is these data centers where the AI computers actually run. Other than that, we need more electricity. So you have to build that out. But as far as productivity goes, it's actually a catch-22 because as the productivity increases for AI, it reduces the workforce. So the better that AI gets, the more jobs get lost. So is it a net gain or is it a net loss? We don't know yet. But I think in the next 24 months, it's going to actually be a net loss. And the reason why I say that is because if you lose your job, you might lose your job because of AI, and you might not be able to find a job because of AI. So the next 24 months, I'd actually think AI is kind of a net negative, if you will. It's a headwind. So everybody seems to think it's kind of the internet all over again, and it's going to create productivity. It's going to create gains. There's a lot of people out there that think that at least 10% of the workforce is actually going to lose their jobs because of AI. If it's 3%, that's huge. But 10% is massive, right? 10% of the workforce, I mean, my goodness, but even 3% would be huge. So I don't really see AI so much as a positive right now. It's weighing down. I think it's weighing down on the debt bubble because it's expanding corporate debt, which isn't a good thing because that's going to create liquidity issues, which we have. And so I'm not bullish AI. Now, where I use AI every day. I love AI. AI is fantastic and fantastic for me. And so I think it is going to be a highly, highly productive tool for individuals. But for companies, I think where the productivity comes in is needing less workers.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, Don. And I couldn't agree more with you. Even on my end, I use AI now to help edit my podcast faster. And so I'm able to totally relate. I'm also able to use AI to challenge some of my perspectives and my beliefs and see what biases I'm missing. But at the same time, when we look at the big picture of all these companies, not all of them are real value. And just seeing how much financings they're getting, how much money is getting tossed their way is insanity in my point of view. And that makes me think I want to shift to, though, when we look at the big picture of the financial world, central banks have been communicating something for the last 2.5 years. They've been buying records amount of gold and speaking for some of the things that you already have spoken about in this interview, really starting to warn that they see even the prices today pretty cheap in terms of where it's going for the long-term view. And there are other things, I think, where the markets are speaking in terms of when we think of even the gold and silver space, all these companies who are now making record amount of profits, all these mining companies, this is pretty big for their balance sheets. There's a lot of value that's being created in this space. And so a question I want to ask you is sometimes when the market speaks, people choose not to listen. They choose to keep following the trends or keep following the mainstream media. So a question I have for you is, what do you want to debunk right now about the markets? Why should more investors be paying close attention to gold and silver?
Well, I think I already debunked the market in this conversation when I analyzed the current state of the economy, how it's getting weaker. So I don't think I need to go there, but I can talk. I think where I should focus here is gold and silver. You mentioned how investors have ignored the market. If anybody that had any vision should have owned the silver miners prior to the breakout. If you saw this coming, the reason why is because there's so few. There's only 15 silver miners with a market cap over $100 million. 15. And there's really only 5, I call them the big 5, that kind of must-own high-quality names. And you could go a little higher and say 6 or 7, but there's not that many high-quality silver names. So everybody should have owned those. And if you did own those, I created a list of 6 stocks, the best 6 silver names in February of 23. And last time I looked, they were up 370% since February 23. 370%. And they still have a long way to go. I actually projected out at $150 silver, those 6 names, one of them got acquired, Silvercrest got acquired, so there's only 5 of them left. But those 5 stocks will average, if we get to $150, according to my math, will average a 25 bagger. That's generational wealth type stuff. That you talk about people are ignoring what's happening, what's actually happening here. We're talking about the top 5 silver names going up 2,500%. And so that was 23. So we're going over about a period of about 5 years. An average return of 500% a year. That's crazy stuff. Crazy, absolutely crazy stuff. If you look at Newmont Gold, it was trading at $30 in February of 24. And I told everybody, this is the bottom for Newmont. I said, buy it to the bottom. I use a strategy called buy to the bottom. When I say buy to the bottom, it's usually knocking on the bottom when I say it. I said, buy at 30. I said, buy Newmont to the bottom. And then it got to like $29.75. It didn't go much lower. Today it's at 99. And I have a target of $400 at $6,000 gold. And $6,000 gold isn't necessarily the top. So that means that Newmont's already doubled once, more than that. It's up 168% year to date, trading at $99, 168%. But let's just say if a lot of people that got into it, they're up 100%. So if you got in at $45, $50 actually, if you got in at $50, you're up 100%. But you weren't even early. I mean, at $50, you weren't even that early. You were like, okay, Newmont's broken out from 30 to 50. I better jump on the train. So you're up 100%. My target is $400. So if you double again from $100 to $200, if it doubles again, you're up 300%. Then if it doubles again from 200 to 400, you're up 700%. So Newmont, and again, this is a 700% move for Newmont at $6,000 gold. And that's not even the early birds. The early birds have even bigger returns than that. And Wall Street's over here ignoring what's going on in the gold and silver mining space, saying, oh man, we got a 16% return. This is fantastic. You got a 16% return. Newmont's up 168%. And like I said, silver miners, 370%. Those five names are up that. And we're early. We just started this breakout. Michael Oliver says that the breakout in the miners started in November because we had this big October correction and then we broke out in November. And he said that in November is when gold miners broke out versus the S&P 500 for the first time. So the reason why is because the S&P's been going straight up, right? The S&P, since 2008, the S&P 2009, the S&P's just been going absolutely bonkers, right? 666 all the way to 6,800. So it was kind of hard for gold or the gold miners to outperform the S&P, right? But this year, as I speak, they started to outperform. Even though the S&P's at 6,800 still, gold's at 4,300, the HUI's up, GDX is up 140%. GDX is up 150%. So the miners finally broke out. So the miners right now, the gold miners, are outperforming the stock market. But it just started. That outperformance just started. It's not like, so we're basically early in the cycle, if you will. The other thing that shows you that we're early in the cycle is the silver gold ratio. So the silver gold ratio it got to almost 3.5% back in 2011. It was trading at 1.1%. It's practically nothing not too long ago, because gold was doing well and silver was doing absolutely pathetic. Then today it's at 1.5%. So 1.5 versus 3% in 2011. So we're probably going to go back to 3%. So that means silver is going to outperform gold by 100%. It go from 1.5 to 3%. So gold's going to go up, but silver's going to outperform it by 100%. I think that's going to happen. But because that SGR is at 1.5, that's another indicator that we're early, if you will. We got a long way to go. The other signal that we're really, really early is if you look at the silver chart. The silver chart had an unbelievable massive, on the monthly basis, massive cup and handle that went all the way back to 1970. And that, we just broke out of that just recently, just in the last weeks. Once we got up to $60, we pretty much broke out. You could say we broke out at 50, but it hasn't been very long that we just broke out. It was cup and handle. It was formed over, I don't know, 50 years or something. Yeah, 50-year cup and handle that we just broke out of. So even though the miners look like, oh my God, look at the RSI on these things, look at the silver on these things. This is still early innings. And for me, I firmly believe I won't take any profits until gold gets to 5,000. So we're at 4,000. And then when we get to 5,000, I'll look at the SGR. And if it's still like 1.6, 1.7, I'll probably be patient and wait until it gets to 1.8 before I take any profits. But we're getting close to there. But that's the beginning of taking profits for me. And then I'm going to ride this thing higher. I think we're going a lot higher here. So I'll stop there.
You use the words getting started, or this is just the beginning. And I'm getting lots of times now questions from friends who are starting to slowly wake up and pay attention to silver and also gold, but especially silver because it's poor man's gold and they're a millennial and they have other expenses. But they're constantly asking, hey, Ben, is there going to be a big pullback? What's going to happen? And my question to you, I want it to be less about price. I want it to be more about the mathematics that doesn't always get talked about. So when we look at gold and silver, I know you have a big background of mathematics or probabilistic thinking. I see it in the way that you communicate, in the way you do a lot of calculations, a lot of due diligence. And so my question is, could you please explain to me, almost like if I was a 5-year-old, could you explain to me why actually we are just getting started, where, looking at math, where like these numbers could really go for gold and silver?
Yeah, I'll talk to you like you're an 8th grader, because an 8th grader can understand it. The key here is history as far as being early. So in 1971, gold was $35. And then Nixon took us off the gold standard, and we had a bull run from $35 to $850. It was quite a run. But you could say you can look at the bottom at 35, or you could use another one. We actually ran up, and then I think we went to like $150 in 76, and then ran from 150 to 850, somewhere in there. But 5x move, somewhere in there, or you could go even higher from 35 to 185, which is 850, which is just a massive move. But the bottom line is that bull market, it basically ran because of uncertainty, because we had the 1970s was basically a very lethargic economy, and we had 2 energy crises, and we had high inflation. So the uncertainty, economic uncertainty and no inflation, basically pushed gold up, that massive uncertainty. And then we can look at that period, how far it actually ran. you can use different numbers, 10x, 5x, depending on what you want to do, even more than that. But basically massive runs, if you will, from bottom to the top. Then from 1980 to 2000, inflation went away. But not only did inflation go away, but economic uncertainty went away as well. So the economy started growing in 81, 82 when Reagan got into office. We didn't have another recession until 91. That's why Bush lost his reelection, because we were in the economy slowed down. But that recession in 91, 92 was very mild. But gold did nothing. Gold didn't bounce there because we didn't have any inflation. But people weren't really, it was a mild recession. People were really worried about, oh, this is a problem, this is a crisis. It wasn't really we didn't have a financial crisis in 91, 92. We just had a mild recession. Then we were back on our feet. 93, we're back on our feet. So gold did nothing that whole decade. Then 2000, 2001, we had two crises back to back. You had the dot-com bubble pop, Nasdaq dropped 50%, and then you had 9/11. We had a recession. And then we had the great financial crisis in 2008. So the 2000s, from 2000 to 2010, were somewhat similar to the 1970s, but we did have inflation. But we did have a lot of economic uncertainty, and the S&P wasn't rising. But gold, it was $250 in 2000. It went from $250 to $1920. And basically the same thing that happened in the 70s happened in the 2000s. The economy was sluggish, wasn't growing, but you had economic uncertainty. So what can you draw from those two periods? Two things. One, uncertainty, and two, economic sluggishness, and three, the stock market basically languishing. Those were what drove gold higher. And gold ripped from $250 in 2002 all the way to 1920. Same thing that happened in the 1970s. So then, just like the 1980 to 2000, from 2010, 2011 until today, which is about 14 years, the economy, well, until recently, but the stock market's all it's done is go up, 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 up. During that period, gold and the miners did nothing, especially up until 2020. So from 2011 to 2020, they did nothing. It was a bear market for that. That's what happens when the economy is solid. You don't have inflation. Gold does nothing. So the main driver that we have seen is economic uncertainty and a flat stock market, a languishing stock market. That's the reason why I believe we're early, because we haven't even gotten to that point yet where the stock market is sluggish, where the stock market's not going higher, where people are looking for places to make money. So I believe that this stock market is going to crash and languish for the rest of the decade. And when it does that, gold will decouple and gold will go up, and the stock market will be flat, and people will make money in stocks and not bonds, in mining stocks, gold and silver mining stocks, for at least 2 more years. Some people think it could go longer than that. I think at least 2 more, though, 26, 27. I'm hoping for 28. I think basically the next 2 years, 26 and 27, I think the odds are very, very good that gold trends higher both years, anywhere from 25% to 50%, somewhere in there. Once we get to 28, the odds, the probability, which you mentioned before, start to go down, because you start to get at the end of a cycle. You don't know when the cycle is going to end. But once the cycle ends, gold will go down, the miners will go flat, and it'll be time to get out. So I'm hoping that we get 28 would be nice. I think 29 is a bit of a long shot. If people are waiting for 29, I'm hoping we get all the way through 28. That'd be fantastic. If we get 3 more years of growth in gold, that's good. So on my targets, I think that $5,000 gold is easy. $6,000 is probable, and then 7,000, 8,000 are possible. And some people are more like the 10,000, 15,000 are possible. But I don't think those levels are possible, because I think that once the debt bubble pops, I think we'll get a new currency. So when we get a new currency, it won't be priced at 10,000 anymore. It'll be priced at whatever this new currency is at. That's the reason why I don't think we'll see it.
I appreciate that explanation. Don, and it just shows, that this is truly a generational wealth of opportunity. And it's something that I also don't like seeing gold go to the side in terms of war happening or all the problems that are going on in the world. But I do want more people to be educated of what's really happening and where the markets are truly speaking. And that makes me want to ask, in these bull markets, if you look at me, I got long hair, I'm in my early 30s, but I haven't actually experienced ever before in my financial career a bull market like this. And you've even explained that we've waited 50 years for this tremendous move that's now starting for the metals. So a question I have for you is, what should investors who are already invested in gold and silver, what should they be cautious about in a bull market?
Volatility. So back in August, September, mainly September, I think, I told everybody, get ready for a 20 to 30% correction. It's going to happen. Prepare for it. Always keep some dry powder on the side and with a list of stocks you're going to buy the dip on. It's coming. And sure enough, we had a 22% correction in the HUI in October, and the average portfolio was down 25% or more. Brutal, right? Well, and I also told them that it would, in a bull market, it would correct in 4 to 8 weeks. And it corrected in 4 weeks. So you went down 25%, and it came all the way back 4 weeks later. That's a typical bull market. That's exactly what we saw from 2002 to 2010. Every single year we had about at least a 10% correction, but it always came back and higher, right? So I would say you ride the train, but expect the volatility. But the hard part is you're going to catch a falling knife. If anybody is coming in late, and anybody that just got in, if you didn't get in early, right, say 23 or before, you're going to, especially if you got in after August of this year, you are subjecting yourself to the volatility, to the falling knife. I was bearish back in 21. I was only bearish in the near term. The long term, I always had these huge targets. I was just saying that we're not going to make any money in miners in 21, and we didn't. That's all I was saying, the near term. I always talk about the near term because the near term is when you buy stocks, not when you sell them. It's when you buy them. And so I'm always focused on the near term. What's the gold and silver prices? So I think that history's going to run. So we just had the October correction. I think the next one will be very similar. So if gold prices go down 12% from here, you're looking at $3,800 gold. I think $3,800 is a good target. Silver, if it goes down 18%, like it did last time, you're looking at $54 silver. And the HUI, it would go down to 546, and it's currently about 700. I actually think these numbers are a little high. I actually think we're going to go below those. People always call me the most bearish bull, but I think I would expect to go below 3,800, below 54, below 546. That's my expectation. So if you buy today, I mean, you're going to get a significant haircut, probably at some point. So you have to be very careful of that. It's hard to get in late. And that's why if you get in now, you have to prepare yourself to buy that dip. I basically, the best thing that I've done as an investor, but I'm more a speculator than an investor, is buy dips. And I wrote a book. My book is probably the best book out there that helps you guys understand how to analyze and strategies for investing in gold and silver mining stock. It's on Amazon. Just like Don Durrett, gold and silver, you'll find it. The thing that I learned that you have to buy dips. Perfect example, the one place I learned it the most was the last major crash, which was in 2008. I was down 70%. But some of the best stocks I ever bought, because again, you always want to be ready for when they come, right? They're ready for those dips, was in January of 2009. So I was buying stocks in January 2009, nearly at the bottom. So that's what got me back. I was up 100% in 2011. And I learned that lesson. Buying the dips is the best time to buy stocks. And that's when people don't want to buy. They don't want to buy bottoms. They don't want to buy dips. So you have to tell yourself that is the opportunity that you don't want to pass on. Buying the dips is the best thing to do. And that's what's really, and then I look from that lesson, what I did from that point forward, from 2008 till today, is I always tried to forecast dips. And there's been a lot of them between now and then, right? And so whenever the HUI got, so I was called, now the HUI is 700, right? When the HUI was struggling from 2013 to 2020, I called 250 on the HUI, the neutral line. So anything below 250 was a buy zone. Above 250 was a warning, the yellow. And then above 300 was orange, and above 350 was red. You just didn't want to buy those because they were false breakouts. And every single time you would go above 250, it was just a matter of time you'd go back down below 250. Sometimes we went all the way down to 200. And so the best buy zones, so anything below 200 was like load the boat. Anything below 225 was to buy aggressively. And then 225 to 250 was big, kind of a buy zone. And that's how you have to think. So you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. So now if you're an investor today, you have to be thinking in terms of, okay, if I get in today, I got to be ready to buy those dips. They're going to happen, but I want to take advantage of them. But I don't think you're going to be able to get stocks much below than 20% down. 30% down is about as low as I think you're going to get. Depends on the quality of the name. But there's still going to be opportunities for stocks you buy today. They should go down 15 to 25%. I think you can expect that. For instance, the top 5 silver stocks, which I named today, I think you will probably get a chance to buy them all about 15% below these levels. So the number one is Cooler Mining. I've had them ranked number 1. The second one is Pan American Silver. Third is Hecla Mining. The fourth one is First Majestic Silver. And then the fifth one is Endeavor Silver. Those are the big 5. And I think that those big 5, as a matter of fact, like SILJ, the top 4 stocks are 4 of those names. And that's the stock that's up the most this year is the ETFs. So those 5 silver names should, if silver goes to 100, 125, 150, which is my expectation, right? We're speculating here. We're betting on the silver price. We're betting here. We're gambling. That's what these mining stocks are, uber volatile. We're just gambling on the silver price. You really need to believe. I always say this. The only time you buy mining stocks or crypto is if you believe. It's almost a religious experience. You have to believe that gold and silver prices are going higher in order to withstand this volatility. In order to buy dips, you got to believe. And so if you believe silver's going to 100, and you can always tell the believers because the believers, nothing seems to rattle them. Whereas if you have a mining stock that goes down 25%, you own a silver miner and it goes down 25%, and you're sending me an email, what's going on? It's dropping. They're not true believers. Me, I'm like, oh, so what if it goes down low enough, we buy more. That's the mentality. I mean, that was always the mentality like with the Bitcoin. If it goes lower, we buy more. You know, that you have to have that same belief in gold and silver, I believe, to really be in this space. Now, people are going to get really lucky with gold and silver mining stocks because in a bull market, everybody looks smart. So normally, gold and silver mining stocks, you can't treat them as regular stocks because they're not. They're really oddball stocks. The valuation's all based on the gold and silver price. So if the gold and silver price, all it's doing is going up, it looks like you just look like you're a brilliant investor. Oh, I bought a stock that's smart. This is a great company. There's no such thing as a great mining company. There's only one. There's one. I mean, you could call Agnico Eagle a great mining company. But that's the only one. Everybody else is just rolling the dice.
I appreciate that answer, Don. And something that I want to say beyond belief is patience. It's clear to me that for the last 20 plus years, you've been so patient. You've done so much work and you're a real expert, which is why I want to bring you on, like a voice that I trust and someone that I look up to and that I follow. Don, something that I want to share more of though is you're also more than an investor, more than a speculator. And I know for you, there's so much more to Don Durrett. So a question I want to ask you is, who is Don Durrett and what is one truth that you want to continue to speak?
Oh, wow. Okay. We're going to peel back the onion a little bit here. Before I go into who Don Durrett is, I wanted to follow up on something you said earlier, that you're not happy about gold prices going higher. Me neither. This is an end of era event. But that's the reason I got into it, because I actually came into this through metaphysics. I'm actually more of an expert in metaphysics than I am in gold and silver, believe it or not. I've written about 15 books on metaphysics. I've only written one book on gold and silver. So the reason why I got into this is because I firmly believe, remember I talked about believe, firmly believe that the U.S. was going to lose its global dominance, its global hegemony. That the U.S. was basically, its era was going to come to an end in my lifetime. And now we're witnessing it. So I knew this in 1989, believe it or not. I've been researching the future since 1989. So not only did I come across information that basically said that the U.S. empire, is how he called it, was going to end, but I got a lot of, I've always try to correlate it. I found follow-up information that said the same thing. And so that's how I got into gold. That's why I've been a believer. That's why I've never wavered. I haven't wavered an inch. I've never been nervous. I just keep buying more stocks because I know that I basically feel certain of the outcome. Now, the bad news is, and what you said earlier, and I always tell people, we can't celebrate because gold and silver are going up, we're making money on mining stocks. It's just like that in that scene where I forget the name of the movie, The Big Short. And in The Big Short, where Brad Pitt says, stop dancing. They're dancing because they made a bunch of money. He goes, quit it, stop dancing. He goes, lives are getting ruined. People are losing their houses, they're losing their jobs. And that's exactly what we're going to see here. So even we're going to make money in gold and silver, it's not something to celebrate. It's not a good thing. It's a bad thing, like you said earlier. This is a very unsettling situation that we're moving into here. Very unsettling. I'm not happy about it. I've lived through an era where all I've seen is my standard of living go up. That's all I've experienced my entire life. Standard of living just goes up, up, up. It's mind-boggling to me. Every year it improves, but that's coming to it. I mean, it's gotten to a point now where you order something, it comes the next day to your doorstep. It's insane. It's insane. The technology is absolutely insane. You want to pay a bill, you just open your phone and pay your bill. Our standard of living, anything you need, you can get. That's all coming to an end, and I'm not happy about that. I'm used to my comfort level. We live better than kings lived in the 17th, 18th century. We live better than they did. And we're going to lose that. We're going to lose that standard of living. But so the next 10 years is going to be a pain in the butt, is this transition. So for me, it was Don Durrett. So I learned stuff. I really don't like to talk about this publicly. I want somebody else to kind of let the cat out of the bag and tell everybody the truth. I know that these are ideas that the average person cannot understand. It's just, they're too big to grasp. So I've been very subtle. I drop a few truth bombs on X, but I don't really talk about metaphysics too much because until society is ready. But we're getting closer and closer. And what people don't realize is that the changes that are coming to the planet have nothing to do with economics. It has nothing to do with politics. It's going to be a spiritual shift, which nobody's expecting. Well, real souls like myself are expecting it. But the average person, you can't expect what's going to happen. And the reason why is because when we incarnate, this is nobody's first lifetime. When you incarnate into a body on this planet, you forget who you are. This isn't your first lifetime. So you forgot your past lives. You forgot who you are. That forgetfulness is done on purpose. Everybody comes with a plan. Everybody comes with an agenda. And that plan and that agenda is to learn something. And the learning is all about your soul. It's all about expansion of awareness. It's all about basically becoming a better soul, if you will, but it's basically about an awakening process. That awakening process is very slow. Many, many lifetimes. I've had over 1,000. And so normally you don't, like Earth, this planet, normally you don't awaken. Few people awaken, right? Avatars in India, few old souls become enlightened, if you will. The average person doesn't. And they're not supposed to, because they came here to learn lessons, basically with amnesia, forget who you are, where you came from. We are the generation that awakens. We're the first generation. Now, we don't fully awaken. This generation doesn't fully awaken. But what we do is we put it in motion. We are the generation that starts the shift, starts the change. And I really believe that I wouldn't even be talking about this if we weren't close. 26 and 27, the next 2 years are the pivot point for what I'm talking about. The pivot point into this new era. So the new era that's coming isn't just about America. It's just this end of global hegemony for the U.S. That's not what this whole thing's about. This whole thing's about is global in nature, and it's a spiritual awakening. Now, a couple events, I've been waiting for the truth to come out. I'm going to go into it. I'm going to let the cat out of the bag today. I'm going to tell you guys. So I've been waiting patiently for 30 years. I do the gold and silver as a hobby. I've been doing that, just waiting for you guys to wake up. So there's been a couple events that happened this year that tell me we're getting closer for the truth to let out. The first one was there was a Harvard professor who heard about these autistic children that were telepathic. And in the scientific community, they think telepathy isn't real. It doesn't happen. Or it's something we don't study. It's a taboo subject. It's esoteric. They don't study science. Science departments in colleges don't study esoteric knowledge. It's a no-go zone. Well, this Harvard professor said, I'm going to reproduce that. I don't think that's real. I'm going to go and reproduce that study or experiment. And so and you can go on the internet, and you can go to YouTube and do Harvard professor telepathy, and you'll get all the information on it. She reproduces this experiment with these telepathic kids, and word gets out, and they've actually made a documentary on it. But the thing is fascinating. So that was one of the first breadcrumbs that scientific community is starting to get interested in consciousness. But the irony of this is that the mainstream media didn't pick it up. This study should have made the front page of the New York Times. I mean, it's that huge, because consciousness is literally the most important factor of life itself, of our future. The fact that they ignored it I thought, come on, man. And so we're still early. People aren't ready yet. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened was another college professor came out and said that consciousness is the building block of everything, which is true. But again, it didn't get anywhere. But here's the key here to it all is consciousness is energy. Consciousness is alive, and consciousness is the building block of everything. But consciousness is not self-contained. This is what science believes. Science believes that our consciousness is self-contained within our bodies, or within an animal's bodies, right? A dog, for instance. That when you're born, that consciousness goes into you and it stays self-contained. But telepathy proves that it's not self-contained. But another one is they've done studies with animals, especially dogs, where they put cameras inside of people's houses. And the second that somebody walks out of their office building and starts walking towards their car, the dog starts wagging his tail. And it just shows you that consciousness is not contained. Now, how in the heck is that animal picking up your thoughts, right? So this is the tip of the iceberg here, and this is what's coming. And what's coming is this, and now again, everything is conscious, not just us, but even everything, our cells, our skin, everything. And this table that I'm leaning on here, it's conscious, which just blows people's minds. There are people, so I've been studying this stuff for a long time. There are people, especially children, who talk to plants, talk to rocks, because they're conscious, they're alive. And there's a lot of people, spiritual, psychic people, they'll talk about how they talk to animals, like they'll talk to a dog and the dog will go, "You can hear me?" The dog will spark up and the dog will live down, "You can hear me?" And they'll literally have a conversation with a dog. Where the other one, like a rock, it's like, well, wait a minute, no, there's no way a rock can't be conscious. There's no way you can. But yes, if you do the research, you'll find this out. It's kind of similar to like astrology. Like people think astrology is fake. It's fake only if you don't do the research. But if you spent a full year studying astrology, there's no way after that 1 year study that you would think it was fake. It's just a matter of knowledge, understanding. So we are the generation that basically awakens. So the creator, I want to go back to this consciousness, about this consciousness, the building block of everything, the science guy. It's very similar to Einstein's paper back in, I think it was 1904 or something, early 1900s, when he put his paper out and just changed the whole physics movement. This could change everything. When people start studying, is consciousness really the building block of everything? Well, not only is it the building block of everything, but everything is interrelated and connected. There's no separation between anything. Separation is an illusion. It doesn't exist. Here's the other thing. This is the one thing I don't really like to let the cat out of the bag, but I'm going to. We don't really exist as individuals. We exist as part of the creator. We are not separate from the creator, because nothing is. The building block that we are is consciousness, and consciousness has only one source. There's only one source of consciousness, which is the building block, which is the creator. So there's no separation. Separation doesn't exist. I learned this in 1989, but I grasped it. That makes perfect sense to me. I knew it. So it's like certain things you kind of just understand. And so when I started reading metaphysical books, I understand this. This all makes perfect sense to me, because I brought it with me from past lives. Just like Mozart. Mozart could play the piano when he was like 3 years old, right? He brought it with him. He didn't learn how to play the piano at 3 years old. He could just play it. It's very similar. So some of us come in with this knowledge and we grasp it. And now I grasp it, but I couldn't really share it for 35 years, but now we're getting close, where this is going to start become more common. What I'm saying is going to start to become more common. And there's no separation between anything. There's no separation between us. So Ben, me and you, we literally are connected. So we could turn off the volume here and have a conversation with lip reading, but we could hear each other in our minds. That's possible. All it takes is vibration. It's like a vibrational connection, like our animals, like they can vibrate, they can connect in. It's the same way. It's just doing that, knowing how to connect the consciousness. But the wiring is there because everything is connected. It's similar to like a video game. Every pixel in that game is connected to all the other pixels. There's no separation between the pixels, right? Another one is water, like the ocean. The ocean, every drop of water in the ocean is connected to the whole ocean, if you will. There's no separation. You can't separate. If you take a little drop, there's no difference. There's no, you know what I mean? It's all connected. It's all one thing. So where humanity is going is unity consciousness. That's the future of humanity. So by the middle of the next decade, there will be no more wars between countries. And the reason why is because once the cat gets out of the bag, nobody's going to want to kill another human being. So a government won't be able to create a standing army. Like, I'm not going to kill people. Are you nuts? And so there will be no more standing armies. They'll just fade away. Now, there will be internal stuff going on. Those are like people in denial, right? But not governments. Governments are not going to have standing armies, which is mind-blowing if you wouldn't. That just gives you kind of the tip of the iceberg of how much change is going to happen over the next 10 years. So once we start down this path towards an awakening, if you will, awakening that we're not separate from each other, that we are literally one. Oneness is real. Separation is an illusion. So these are truths. The truth is always true. And so what's going to happen is science, and it started with these two professors. They're going to begin to study consciousness. So up until now, they've refused. I'm not studying that stuff. That's esoteric. Now, there's been a few people that have done it outside the system, but anybody who's done it outside the system has been ostracized, basically kicked out of science. So now it's going to become all the rage, studying consciousness. And so the irony is that science is going to prove what I'm talking about, but they won't be able to prove it. They'll have a lot in the 2030s, and in the 2030s, they'll have a lot of experiments that kind of prove it, where they're kind of, oh yeah, this is, but it won't really become proven without a shadow of doubt, where everybody believes the science, until around 2050. So it's going to take a while for science to prove that this table's conscious. And this table is connected to the floor, and they're both basically, it's all connected. It'll take a while for that outcome, but eventually that's what they'll come to realize. It's going to take, my understanding is going to take about 4 generations to basically remove all the deniers, if you will, until humanity is kind of fully awakened, for everybody to be like me today, if you will. It's going to take about 4 generations. That's kind of a long time, but some of the young kids today, they will actually live through the next 3 generations, right? And so they'll see the whole thing, especially people that are born around 2050. They will literally see the whole 2040s, 2050s. They'll see the entire shift, if you will. And changes will not have happened to such a degree that they'll be able to look back and see how it was and then how it will be. It'll be a lot kind of like me. I mean, I was born in 1960, so I didn't experience the early 1900s, the early 1800s, but I kind of know what they did, right? I got a good you see what I mean? So even though I'm a couple generations ahead of that, you can see back about 2 generations. And so people will be able to basically see the whole thing. But we are the progenitors. We are the generation that puts it all in motion. And we'll know it. We will literally know that we put it in motion. We will know that we were the founding fathers of basically this new humanity. And so that's what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for it to begin. I've just been very patient, waiting for it to begin. And I think 26 and 27 is when it will begin. Something's going to happen. I actually think the trigger's going to be ETs. I think that there's going to be some type of communication with ETs that people start to believe, if you will. Right now, I would say that maybe half of the population believes in ETs and the other half don't, something like that. I mean, truly believe. I mean, about half of them a lot of people, maybe it's true, kind of a maybe, kind of. But I think about 50% probably believe it. And so I think that's the trigger in the next 2 years is my feeling. But the amount of change that's going to happen the rest of this decade, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to all this change. It's like, just move me to 2035. I like, just I don't want these next 10 years. I don't really want to live through them. They're not going to be a lot of fun. But once we come out the other side, I will say this. I wrote a book. It's called The Path Forward. So what I'm saying resonates with you. Read that book, The Path Forward. That explains all the changes that are going to come to society. But the biggest shift that's coming is we're going to go away from materialism. So what's going to happen here when the U.S. economy goes down? the supply chains, if you thought you think the supply chains were bad and we had COVID in 2020, it's just the beginning. The supply chains are going to get a lot worse. For instance, food is going to be difficult. Not the stuff that you want to get and stuff like that, produce and stuff like that's going to be a pain. People are going to start growing their own food. By 2028, growing your own food is going to be all the rage. A lot of people will start growing their food this decade, and that just picks up speed next decade. But materialism, because as the supply chains start to break down, we start living simply, we start living in groups, we start living together, can't afford the rent, nobody has a job, stuff like that. We start simplifying. So the future is all about, we go away from materialism and we go more towards social interaction. So today we kind of live independently of each other. Like if you live in an apartment complex, you probably don't even know your neighbor. So we're going to go away from that and we're going to go more towards social integration, social interaction. So the age of Aquarius, which we're moving into, that is a sign of brotherhood, brotherhood, right? Friendliness. And in the Aquarian age, it's all about that. It's all about social interaction and being friends and having lots of friends. And so that's where we're going. That's the trend. And we're going towards simplicity, more social interaction, less materialism, less government. Government's going to shrink dramatically, absolutely dramatically. We'll govern ourselves in many respects. These are the big themes that are coming over the next 10 years. But getting from here to there, it won't be fun. Change is never fun, especially when you're used to supply chains, right? When Red pull your supply chain, it's like, okay, now what? I got to live without that. I was used to living with that, right? So, yeah, I think we only have one more year of what I call easy street. We're on easy street right now. Easy street, you go and get your computer, go to Amazon, order something, and it arrives. That's easy street. Pay your bills and your electricity stays on kind of thing. We're going to an era where even if you don't pay your bills, the electricity has to stay on. So, yeah, we're heading towards heading towards Uber change, and Trump and COVID were the two biggest progenies of change. They were like the precursors. I mean, Trump all by himself basically destroyed the media and the political system all by himself, right? And COVID kind of broke up our supply chains, showed us how that's all broken. But you can see the change. Those were just warm-ups. Trump and COVID, they were just warm-ups for get ready, get ready, get ready. And then also what's going on in Europe, I mean, what's going on in England, that's kind of insanity, right? We're starting to live in clown world. Everybody sees something's got to break. Something's going to break here. You can't, I'll end it on this one thought, is that our core, if you will, is our soul. And the core of our soul is love. That's the core. That's the foundation of who we are. That's our true identity is. And everyone's this way. Everybody's core is basically love. And also free will. So the creator, basically, we are the creator, so we have free will, right? You don't tell the creator what to do. We are the creator. We demand free will. We know intuitively, it's fascinating that they say the creator gave us free will, but that's not exactly how it happened. We are the creator. We are free will. That's the truth of it. We are free will. That's who we are. We are love, and we have free will because the creator, basically, sovereignty, if you will, individual sovereignty. So if a government tries to take away our individual sovereignty, it goes counter to reality. It goes counter to the truth. And human beings, we demand our freedom. We have to be free. If we're not free, we're not happy. So this idea that the government can basically be like, look over us and tell us how to live our lives, we will never be happy in that situation, right? It just doesn't work. That's not how we're wired. We are wired for free will. We are wired for love. We're not wired for self-love, that's kind of inherent. We should have self-love, but that's not how we're wired. We're wired to love others. We're wired to be in service to others. That's how we're wired. So that's how you have to build humanity. You have to build humanity around free will, love of each other, harmony. because that's the foundation of who we are. That's the foundation of life itself. Look at animals. Animals, I'll leave it here, but a lot of times, like dogs, like they're in these kennels, they're just totally broken, right? And then people take them out of these kennels and love them, and they come to life, right? That's the creator showing you what it's all about. If an animal can basically be kind of broken, and then all it needs is love, and it comes to life, it's the same with us. So love is the core of that animal, right? And it's no different. If you raise animals and you love them from the very beginning, they're generally very loving animals, right? It's the same with humans. And so we're no different. The Creator gave his animals as examples. So that's how you're supposed to live. Wake up, people. And so control doesn't work. Freedom works. And so that's where we're going as society. And that's why I say government's going to shrink. And we're going to basically social interact, and we're going to basically get along with each other, be in service to each other. That's the future of civilization. And get on board. I mean, I created a book called Team Creator. We're all basically trying to go that direction. Everything I've been saying, we're going that direction of basically being in service to one another and creating a society based on harmony and love. That's what we want to do. America was an experiment to try to do that, but we failed. The American experiment failed. That's what the American experiment was supposed to do, individual sovereignty. That was what the Bill of Rights was supposed to do. But after 9/11, we ripped the Constitution up. We ripped up First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. We just ripped them up and said, oh, those don't count anymore. We don't need, those are written by a bunch of old white guys. We don't need that. We don't need that anymore. But that was the beginning of the end for America. Now America's toast. America has no future. I don't know what we're going to call. America's going to break up into countries. I don't know what we're going to call them. They're going to be regions, but there's not going to be a central government. Washington, D.C. will become a museum. It will become a museum. Well, people will go there to see what it used to be like. It'll be a museum. There will be no central government. That's where we're heading. And it's not that far away. It's in our lifetime. And I'm 65 years old, and it's in my lifetime. That Washington will be a museum. So everything I've said, I mean, write it all down. We'll talk about it in 5-10 years. But you can read my book, Path Forward. It's all in there. But Ben, this has been a pleasure. First time I've talked about this publicly. I waited 35 years to do it publicly. I'm right now, one last thing, I'll end it here. I'm currently creating an AI video of chapter 10 in my book, Team Creator, where I do a TED Talk and I explain everything, a lot of stuff I talked here, where I basically solve all the problems of the world through spirituality, through truth. So that video should be out here next year sometime. So you guys can look for that video. I'm going to put it on YouTube, and I have a YouTube channel, Don Durrett, so you guys can subscribe to that. So when it comes out, you guys will see it. But that's going to be a really good video. It's going to be about 30 minutes long. TED Talk, talking about all this spiritual stuff about unity consciousness. I wrote the script. The script's already done. I just have to create the video. But it's going to be really good. Thanks for having me on.
I just want to say one last thing is I appreciate you showing more of who you are with the world. And I have one last question, which is we could choose positive light, bright light and white light, or we could choose dark light, black light. And you talked about love, and I see love as that positive light, and I see fear as the dark light. How can we choose love over fear?
Well, that's a really, really difficult question. A lot of it has to do with what you came to accomplish in this lifetime. A lot of people will intuitively move as the planet moves towards unity consciousness. It will be a very natural thing for them to kind of go basically become a very loving person who's here to help humanity. It really comes down to you have to be really careful around focusing on yourself, on ego, on being self-driven versus being more driven towards what humanity needs, which is more selfless driven. So if people are selfless driven, it's going to be very easy because they'll see what society needs and they'll join the team, like the team creator. But the people that are more egotistical and more selfish and are more out for themselves, they don't realize it's a fine line. I spoke earlier about addiction and how addiction, you think you can control it and then it controls you. So a lot of people, it's very natural on this planet to think in terms of themselves. They're more selfish. They're more out for themselves. They're out for their happiness, their individual happiness, maybe their family's happiness. And you have to be careful because it's a slippery slope, because the more you focus on you and maybe just your family too. I mean, you really need to think in terms of the whole world is your family, not just your family. It's a slippery slope. A lot of people don't realize, but you can become dark and light you can get gray real quick. So if you're thinking in terms of me, my family, I'm going to do what they need. And you start thinking that way and you start become internalized. You don't realize, but you're actually creating negativity because you're not thinking broadly enough. You're not thinking that you're interrelated with the rest of society. You need to think in terms of the interrelationship and how you fit into all of that. So you have to, and so that's what I mean. It's difficult. That's the dark and the light. It's more of motivation. If you're motivated for your personal satisfaction, your personal wealth, your personal happiness, even your family itself, it's okay to think in those terms if you also include the rest of the world, right? The whole thing. And this is what's difficult. People tend to think in terms of their survival, their security, but it's again, it's a slippery slope. You're addicted to your personal well-being, if you will. That addiction will put you down, not the road you really want to go down. And the reason why is it gets really, really complicated. But the reason why is because we each vibrate at a certain energy level. And that vibration literally dictates our outcomes, our experiences. And the more you're more insular you are, you're going to lead to those type of outcomes. Whereas if you vibrate more into service, into humanity, if you vibrate that way, your experiences will lead in a more positive outcome, if that makes any sense. So the dark and the light, a lot of it is your motivation, your internal motivation. And you have to be, and a lot of people get stuck really early on where they become thinking in terms, me. I got to do this to make money. I need to do this to be successful. And then they start thinking about, the name of your podcast, The Greatest Life, that's actually a slippery slope, because if that could be a very selfish motivation, my greatest life. If you don't include service in that, if service isn't a big part of your greatest life, you're actually going to set yourself up for negative outcomes. The only way that you're going to find kind of harmony, true satisfaction, and good outcomes is if you're in service to society and service to humanity. And the reason why is because I talked about earlier. That's the core of who we are. The core of who we are is that there's no individualism. We are connected to each other. So if we're connected to each other, society wants you to integrate with that. Now, here's what people never thought about. But for instance, those animals that are in the kennels that are broken, right? The broken animals, right? That nobody loves them or whatever. Humans can get broken too. And usually they don't realize it, but they break themselves by being too insular. they're thinking too much about themselves. If they need to break that habit and they need to flip it, they need to pivot away from it and bring the love out of them. But the way that they do to bring the love out of them is to love other people, be more selfless and not selfish. These are this is how you get away from darkness. Darkness, a lot of times people don't even realize that they're being dark. They don't realize it. They think that selfishness is a normal, natural thing. But it actually leads to darkness, believe it or not. For instance, any criminal, if you will, is always thinking about themselves. Always, 100% of the time. And that is another indicator, if you will, that that's not a good thing. I mean, they should analyze that. They should analyze selfless versus selfish versus what kind of outcomes that you end up having. But we're entering an era. We're going into an era where selfishness will no longer work. It won't work. You can try to do it. It won't work. For instance, people will not be able to live by themselves very much anymore. You'll need some type of, how these supply chains start to break, you're going to need some type of a family structure around you. And you're going to need to work with them, and you're going to need to become more selfless. So the only reason I'm talking about this is that's where society is heading. And so as you do that, you're going to spread light and love, versus the more restrictive you are, the more insular you become, the more darkness you're going to end up creating, if you will. And it's a slippery slope. The more I actually think that, for instance, criminals, is that they actually get more and more selfish. It's me. You're right. It's all about my personal survival. I that's what drives them to take from another human being, if you will, because that's what criminality is. It's basically taking from another. You're taking from society, taking from another human being, which is the total opposite of being selfless. If you're selfless, you wouldn't take, you would give, right? Take versus give. If you want to spread light and love, you need to learn how to be selfless. You need to learn how to give. You need to learn how to be service. That is the core of who we are. It's the core. If you're not that way, you're going to end up being broken. The Creator is going to break you some way or another. Those are going to be your lessons. Those are what those lessons are all about. Those lessons are all about teaching you the truth. You got to come to the truth. And so that's what I've been doing for 35 years. But again, nobody cares yet. I mean, 80% of the people that are watching this are like, it's going over their show. Whatever he's saying doesn't mean anything, right? This isn't reality. That's not how we live today. And they're right. It isn't how we live today. We don't talk like this. The average person doesn't talk like this. We don't think this way, but we will soon. What I'm saying today will resonate. In a couple of years, what I'm saying will resonate. It'll be the other way. Today it's 20/80. It'll be 80. A couple more years, it'll be 80/20, where it resonates, and people will realize exactly what I've been saying here. But it's been a really good talk. I've really enjoyed it.
I've also really enjoyed this talk, Don. I really appreciate you for speaking your truth. I appreciate you for the way you choose to show up in the world, both to yourself and to others, thinking more we rather than me. And I just want to take this last little bit of time here, Don, just to truly thank you, even in my first year starting a podcast and sharing more things that I want to share with the world, giving me that opportunity to believe in me and to come on to my show to really help people. So I want to thank you for supporting me.
Absolutely, Dan. It's been great.